Good morning and namaste. This is the first of our, I believe, long anticipated Bhagavad Gita classes, and it's going to be relatively informal. I'm going to try to go in depth on some topics that are related to yoga, and I think this is meant to be something that will help you as a serious yoga practitioner and someone who's either teaching or wants to teach, or who just really wants to go in depth and understand yoga philosophy. So that's what I want to try to do. I want to try to, shine a light and go down in the depths a little bit and try to make it interesting and relevant for everyone. So we're not going to go through every single verse of the Gita, but I want to, in each session, try to cover about 4 or 5 verses. Some of them we might spend a little more time on, some of them a little less. And I'm trying to pick out ones from each chapter that we'll probably end up spending 3 or 4 weeks on each chapter. So these are really going to be going on for quite a long time. And, when I'm done going through the Gita, we'll probably go through again and get some of the other verses. We'll see how this goes. Please feel free to put questions in the chat anytime. I do not use a prepared slide presentation for this. There's a lot of material, and I've been doing this for quite some time. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm just sharing the PDF of one of the Gita editions. And let's see. All right, bear with me just a second. So you'll see what I'm reading as we go through. You'll be able to see the Sanskrit. Okay. There we go. All right, so now you should all be able to see the PDF that I am viewing. Okay. Yes, so this is the same, so it's a good question. This PDF is a different edition of the Bhagavad Gita. There are different ancient commentaries on the Gita, and the one that we mailed out, the Bhagavad Gita as it is by Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, is based on an ancient commentary by a commentator named Baladev Vidyabhushan. And this is based on a commentary by another commentator named Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. But I'm going to cover the relatively, straightforward. I'm going to talk about the verses, and I'm going to talk about their meaning, and I'm going to talk about different things that I'll bring out. I will eventually probably make this a little bit better integrated with the books that you have, but really it's the same truths that we're talking about, and we're just going at it from a different perspective. Okay, so I need to go to... Oh, that was too far. There we go. So I'd like to begin by offering pranams to my gurus, specifically to Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is the presenter of the Gita that we mailed out, and who is also my guru. I also would like to offer my pranams to Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Maharaj, who is the presenter of the PDF version of the Gita, which we are looking at. And I would like to invoke blessings of Bhagavan Sri Krishna, the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita, that understanding of Gita should illuminate our hearts, illuminate our lives, and give us new insights and peace and enlightenment from within. So there is a mantra that we use for invocation before discussing these types of Vedic texts dealing with Atma Tattva. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So let us begin. So we've skipped straight ahead to Chapter 2. Chapter 1 is basically an introduction. It starts by King Dhritarashtra asking Sanjaya, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do once they had met on the battlefield of Kurukshetra? And Sanjaya, who was a sage and also the advisor of King Dhritarashtra, is narrating all this. And now we have really fast-forwarded to the part where Arjuna has expressed some doubts to Sri Krishna, and Sri Krishna is now explaining some basic things. So the second chapter is titled Sankhya Yoga, or it is referring to Atma Tattva. It is the science of the self. So all of these verses are going to be related to science of the self, who I am, how do I associate with this world, and how can I become less affected by the ins and outs of life in this world. One thing you'll notice is that in both of the Gita editions, you have the Sanskrit is shown in Devanagari, and then it is shown in a transliterated form using the standard diacritics that we try to use in all of our course materials. And there are synonyms. Now these synonyms take each of the Sanskrit words broken up according to rules of Sandhi. If you've been through the Sanskrit introductory course, you know that there's something called Sandhi, which is how Sanskrit words join together and break apart. So here, the Sandhi, for example, tu eva aham, becomes broken up to eva aham. So you can see what the individual words are. So if you really want to go in depth in Sanskrit in understanding, this is actually a good way to do it. I think I was about 15 years old when I started reading the Gita, and the first thing I did before I got a book for learning Sanskrit is I learned to read the Devanagari just by comparing the Devanagari with the transliterated. And then it was a little later I actually had to get a book to learn the actual Sanskrit grammar. And then we have a translation, and some of these translations, you'll find the translations vary a little bit. Some of them are more terse, sometimes they're a little bit more interpretive. And then, of course, you'll have a commentary. And in this edition, the commentary is broken up in different sections. There's in the Bhagavad Gita as it is, there's just a purport, and that's sort of blended together, the different commentaries from the different authorities. So this verse, Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna, na tu evaham jatu nasam na tvam neme janadhipa na chaiva na bhavishyamaha sarve vayam ata param. There was never a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So this is the first verse where Sri Krishna is now giving a principle, and he's explaining something about the Atma. So this is a good reference to not only that the soul is eternal, that we have an eternal existence. And again, there are other verses which we are going to cover today which reinforce this and go into a little bit more depth. So, you know, one of the questions that's being pondered is what is the nature of life and what is the nature of death? So the first thing that Sri Krishna is starting with, let's just clear up the fact that you are eternal. You've always existed. I have always existed. You will always continue to exist. And everyone present on this battlefield will also always continue to exist. So it's a way of saying that, you know, you are not only eternal and there's no death for Atma. The body may die, but the Atma, the soul, continues. You know, you remember we've talked in Sankhya how the Atma is wrapped in a layer of Ahankar. Ahankar is the ego. It's our identity. It's kind of the glue that's keeping the non-material Atma bound to this world of Panchamahabhuta, this Panchamahabhautic world of 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and space. And then the Ahankar is joining the Atma to the mind and intellect, manas, buddhi. And these 3 together, ego, mind, intellect, Ahankar, manas, and buddhi, these comprise the subtle body or sukshma sharir. So this is very important because if you want to consider yoga philosophy, in yoga philosophy, we are really focused on one thing. We're focused on the Atma. Now, some say that yoga is really about the mind. That's correct. Yoga is about, it's a discipline for the mind, and we use asanas, we use pranayam to help steady the mind. You know, you remember from the introductory overview, and by the way, for those of you who missed our very nice workshop, I am going to do a recording of that introductory overview slideshow for the Gita, so please do not feel that you're going to have, you know, really missed out if you were not able to travel and attend that. I am going to do that. I had said I'm going to do it by the end of this month, and it'll be posted up there. But really, yoga philosophy is all about the Atma. If you think about the things that bring you anand, that bring you bliss. Now, when I say anand, this is very important. You remember we've talked about the Panchakosha, right? Annamaya kosha, the platform of nourishment and tasting and sustenance. Pranamaya kosha, the layer of our existence where we thrive on vitality, when we are getting in touch with moving and breathing and living. You know, it's the I'm high on life stage. Manomaya kosha, the layer of our existence which deals with mind, emotions, concepts, imagination, and the Vijnanamaya kosha, the layer of our existence that deals with intellectual knowledge, with practical knowledge, with understanding the world, with science and technology. And Anandamaya kosha. Anandamaya kosha is the layer of our existence which deals with the Atma, the type of bliss that the Atma experiences. So there's a distinction between bodily pleasure that comes with the senses in contact with sense objects, and pleasure that comes from the Atma when we experience some bliss. You know, like we might hear some a kirtan, or we might visit some holy place and we may feel something. We may feel some connection with the divine. Really, you know, what people are doing through various religions is they are trying to make their connection of Anandamaya kosha. They are trying to make a connection with the greater whole, because why? that is something that comes naturally to the Atma. There's a aphorism in Vedanta Sutra, Anandamayobhyasat. The soul by nature is pleasure-seeking. It seeks ananda. So another way to think of this is if you think of the things that bring us the most happiness. The things that bring us the most happiness in this world are the things that come in connection with other atmas, with other sparks of spiritual energy. Even if we see them as being in other bodies, we're feeling something. And when the Atma has left the body, we feel great sadness. Why? Because some people feel that this means that the life has ended, but it doesn't matter whether you believe that the Atma is eternal and it has gone somewhere else. It has gone out of our reach. It has gone out of our view. And so we feel some sadness there. So this is something that is related to this because Krishna is making it very clear. The Atma is eternal. It's always had an existence. It has always existed and it always will exist. There's no way for the Atma to be destroyed. So we're going to go into that in a little bit more detail. Now here, this verse 2:13 is going to explain something further. Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namuhyati. Just as the embodied soul gradually passes within this gross physical body from boyhood to youth and to old age, similarly, the soul receives another body at death. An intelligent person is not bewildered by the destruction and rebirth of the body. So this is very interesting. Think about this. Now, sometimes, it's very unlikely that, let's say that you're doing a yoga class at the Y or something. People are going to come for fitness and they want to get fit or lose weight or maybe just relax and, get some peace in their lives. I've run across so many people, and I've found very few people who see yoga just as a process of fitness. It's usually something that they've made part of their lives, and it brings them some peace. It brings them some happiness. It brings them some stability. Because yoga is a discipline that helps us to focus the mind so that we can connect with higher power. And but it's still unlikely that someone's going to come and say, hey, I want to talk about Atma Tattva. I want to talk about who I am. But nonetheless, this is kind of a starting question here in yoga. And if we want to explain this, this is a great explanation. So think back. Think back when you were a child, okay? So some of you are in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, or, even, like up around my age. And you are, think back when you were 8 years old or 9 years old. Your body has changed completely since then. All the cells in your body have changed. What is it that's the same? And even your mind, you've added so much experience, you've added so much maturity. I think back, I remember, when I was a kid, and I used to think, why I couldn't do certain things, and it just didn't make sense to me. I resented it. And now I look back and I see, okay, yeah, there's a good reason for that. I understand that from an adult perspective. But what's the same? Now, some people will say, oh, well, it's the mind. I am the mind. The mind is the same. But what Krishna is explaining here, it is the Atma. Now, let's talk about the mind. If we want to say that the mind is the self, the mind can change. Has anyone gone through an experience where you, like, let's say, you did something that was completely different and you changed your mind. You changed your perspective. Your perspective rotated. It could change 180 degrees. Maybe you went through some life experience that just changed your perspective. You know, I mean, I've certainly been through phases in my life where I had more of a judgmental attitude towards others, and I've changed my attitudes in many ways, you know, in terms of looking at other people's spiritual practices and looking at other people's, you know, political beliefs and all kinds of things, you know, and I can see that there's a constant. I'm the same person, but my body has changed, my mind has changed, but I'm the same person. So this is the logic here. The soul, the Dehi, is the embodied soul, right? And in this life, we have gone from being a child, and then we've gone from being a youth. Oh yeah, remember what it was like when you were a teenager? Hey, I'm going to live forever. I'm going to, you know, just, you know, my senses are at their peak. You know, sometime around when you're 16, 17, 18, 19, you know, it's just amazing. You are, you know, you feel like you can do anything and you can conquer the world, and, you know, you don't understand all the restrictions that are put on you, and you just, you know, can't wait to get out there and prove everyone wrong. And, you know, you have so much capacity for enjoying life, but there's not as much thought given to the consequences. So I don't think there's a single one of us, you know, if there's anybody here who can say that I never did anything stupid when I was a teenager, you know, my hat's off to you. But generally that's the way that it is. So we go through childhood and we go through youth, and then we become more mature, and eventually we're going to become old, and then eventually the body is going to dwindle, eventually the body is going to die. What's going to happen then? Tata dehantara prapti. Then we'll go and get another body. Now, Krishna explains in the Gita in a later chapter, just as a fragrance is carried by a breeze, so the Atma, the soul, is carried by our desires to another body. Now, someone asked a very interesting question on one of the forums. So what is it that, how does karma attach to the individual being? Karma attaches to the subtle body, to the sukshma sharir. And it specifically attaches to the mind, the conscious and the unconscious mind. And it's attached like baggage. It's something that, you know, we can't, we can do things that help to shed it. So there are practices like doing mantras, and some mantras are specifically supposed to be very good for cutting karma, for cutting previous reactions. But there's still, even if we cut the reactions of previous things that we've done, we still have the seeds of desire. And where are those seeds of desire? In the mind. So there's this cycle. You know, we've talked about that cycle of thinking, feeling, and willing. So the point is, what Krishna is explaining, first of all, understand it's you. You are the same. You are the same as when you were a little baby. It's your, you know, your mind has changed, your intellect has expanded, your body has changed completely, 100%. It's the you that's the same. It's the Atma. And at the time that the body dies, at the time of death, the Atma is going to be carried by our Sukshma Sharir into another body. And if we are Dhira, Dhira means someone who is sober, someone who's intelligent, someone who understands, you know, that this life is temporary, but we're playing for keeps in terms of the Atma. You know, it's a journey, and we want to make upward progress on our journey, not slide back. So if we understand this, then it shouldn't become something of bewilderment. You know, yeah, we still would feel very sad if someone that we love deeply has passed, but if we also, like in Indian culture, when someone has died, like my mother passed away almost exactly a year ago, and so I will make some offering on her behalf. And I felt very sad when she passed also, but she was also a very good person. She did very many good things. And I also want to do something for her kalyan, for her benefit, so I would make some offering to Bhagavan Vishnu and ask blessings on her behalf. So this is a very important part of the original Vedic culture of India, that we will make offerings on behalf of departed loved ones. So anyway, this is a very good verse to understand how the Atma is the same, even though the body has changed, the mind has changed its perspective and therefore changed, and the intellect has expanded. We've acquired so much knowledge, but still we're the same. So now verse 14. Now this is a very interesting one, particularly for practicing yoga. Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukadukada agamapayano nityas tam statikshasva bharata. O son of Kunti, when the senses come in contact with the sense objects, notice matra sparsha. This is the contact with the tanmatras, the sense objects. One experiences cold, heat, happiness, and distress. Such experiences are flickering and temporary, O Bharat, and therefore you must tolerate them. Now this is, so we said first, okay, the soul is eternal. I'm eternal, you are eternal, we'll always be eternal, which also implies that we will continue to have a separate and individual existence, right? And we talked about how the soul is the same within this body as we've gone through our different life changes. Now, this is something where Krishna is giving advice that is, he said that a sober person, someone who's Dita, won't be bewildered by the changes that we face as the body dwindles and it prepares to die. You go through this thing. Once you cross over 50, it's kind of like, you reach 40 and you feel like, well, okay, I'm not quite as young as I was when I was in my 30s. Of course, when you're in your 20s or you're a teenager, you look at someone in their 40s and you think, oh my God, they're ancient. They're like a dinosaur. And you reach your 40s and you feel like I'm hitting my prime. I'm now, experienced and mature. I have, I'm kind of at the top of my career. You hit your 50s and you start to feel, okay, I can see signs that things are starting to slow down here a little bit. Sometimes you see more signs than others. But the point is that, we should, we want to try to do the sensible things. We want to try to take care of our body because the body is a gift from God. It's something that we can use as a vehicle for doing amazing things, beautiful things, wonderful things, for practicing yoga, for teaching yoga, for practicing Ayurveda, teaching Ayurveda, healing people, helping people, promoting spiritual values, progressive values in this world. The human body is an amazing gift. You can't do this if you're in an animal body or if you're in a ghostly existence and you don't have a tangible body. So we want to take care, but we still don't want to be bewildered and be afraid of the approaching of, okay, the body's dwindling. That means it's a wake-up call. It's a time to be sober. It's a time to understand, what do I want to get out of this life? Do I want to end up this life, whoever dies with the most number of toys wins? No, no, no. It doesn't work that way. You enter this world naked and you're going to die naked. That's how it works. What you take with you will be your good activities and your spiritual practices, those stay with you. Those stay with the Atma. If you have achieved a higher level of understanding and progress through your yoga practice, that is going to go with you. This is kind of what Krishna is pointing at here. And how to be sober, how to be focused, you have to not let the cold and heat and happiness and distress and wellness and sickness, all that get you off balance. One of my gurus once said that disease is like an old friend that comes to visit. We have to embrace them, and then we have to say goodbye. You know, we have to let it come. The meaning being that disease is coming, there's a karmic element involved. We've taken whatever precautions we take, we've tried to be healthy, we're still going to get sick. You know, and we just embrace it, accept it, and then say goodbye. Let it go. It's going to go. And don't let it get you off your rocker. Don't let it get you off your routine. This is what Krishna is saying. This world is full of dualities. You know, one day we get a check from the IRS, and then the next day we get a letter from a bill collector saying we owe a bunch of money. Easy come, easy go. This happens, but we don't want to be bewildered. We should understand it is temporary things. So this is a very important word here, anitya. These things are caused by anitya, temporary causes. They come and they go. Agama apayanaha. They come and they go. So the key here, titikshasva, just try to tolerate it. So, you know, when we do yoga practice, there's always going to be something that's going to disturb us. Life is never going to be perfect, and there's some things that we can change, some things that we can't change, some things that we just have to tolerate. So this is giving us a philosophical perspective on, you know, the things that we can tolerate. It's not to say that, you know, when it gets cold, don't wear a jacket, but, and then this verse, I'm going to skip over some of these, but this one I just wanted to mention briefly. Yam hina vyatayantayete purusham purusharshabha samadukka sukham dhiram somratatvaya kalpate. That sober person who remains undisturbed despite the dualities caused by sense perception and who considers happiness and distress to be the same is certainly qualified for liberation from the endless cycle of birth and death. So this is saying, again, that, you know, if you can learn to tolerate, if you can learn to rise above these things, see them all as temporary, see them all as the same, then you can rise above. Then you can then you can very easily make progress on the path of yoga and achieve liberation from the cycle of birth and death. Okay, so now we are again more really good verses here. Nasatha vididhe bhavo na bhavo vidide sata ubhayor apidarishtontas vanayos tattvadarshibhi. Very, very good verses which are explaining these concepts. So again, now this verse I want to talk about very briefly. This is another verse talking about Atma Tattva. Na jayate mriyate va kadachan nayam bhutva bhavata va na bhuyaha ajo nitya shashvatoyam purano nahanyate hanyamane sharire. So here Krishna is explaining explicitly the soul does not take birth nor does he die, nor is he affected by the repeated growth and dwindling of the body. He is unborn, eternal, and ever existing. Though primeval, he remains ever youthful. When the body is destroyed, the soul is not annihilated. So, you know, the Atma, this is, again, giving it a little bit more explicitly. It was said once, and now it's being said again, and more explicitly. There is no birth for the soul. It's only the body that's born, and it's only the body that dies. But the soul is unborn. The soul has always existed. And the soul does not grow old. So, this is giving more clarity on all of these concepts. There's also a similar verse in the Katha Upanishad. So I'm skipping this one. Now, again, here is a verse that I want to close with today. This is a very interesting verse, and it's a very good analogy, and it also has some relation to the concept of Sukshma Sharir and the Sthula Sharir, or the subtle or Sukshma body and the Sthula or gross body. Vasansi jirnani yata vihaya navani grihnati naroparani tata sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. Just as a person discards old garments and acquires new ones, the soul similarly gives up old bodies and accepts new ones. So this is very, interesting, because we've talked about the Atma. We've talked about how the Atma never dies. Now we're talking about how we change bodies, and it's like changing clothes. So, of course, we don't think of death as trivial as changing clothes, but this is really what Krishna is suggesting. Now, it's also said that you may have underclothes, like you might have an undershirt and underwear and so forth, and you remove your outer clothing and change it, and that those inner clothes, they are like the Sukshma Sharir. So the Sukshma Sharir does not actually change. We don't take off the Sukshma Sharir. We remain, as long as we're in this world, we are wrapped in the Sukshma Sharir. The Sukshma Sharir of mind, intellect, ego. So as long as we're in this world, that Sukshma Sharir is with us, and it mutates, it changes according to our physical body, according to the needs of our physical body. And the physical body is like the outer garments that you put on outside that. So we've talked about this in the Manasa module, how the conditioning, how karmic conditioning can actually cause a change in the form of the Sukshma Sharir, or the subtle body. So, you've all encountered persons, I'm sure that all of you at one point or another have encountered persons who have a more beastly outlook on life. Their outlook is more animalistic. They are sometimes more aggressive, very insensitive. Their focus is on physical, everything. Everything is all physical. The way that the Sukshma Sharir, or the subtle body, is shaped, or let's say someone who's very gluttonous, they'll eat anything and everything. Their physical body may begin acquiring characteristics of their subtle body, the Sukshma Sharir. They may end up looking a little bit pig-like, because that's the nature of a pig. A pig is very gluttonous, and it has a physical body which is very suited toward gluttony. And if you've ever encountered someone like that, and you maybe just walk past someone on the street and you feel, oh, wow, that person's really got kind of a beastly consciousness. This is how the Sukshma Sharir, or the subtle body, changes its shape. So, we wear this body like a suit of clothing, and when the suit of clothing becomes exhausted, then it's time for it to be put down, and we'll be putting on a new one. So this is really There are other topics in the second chapter, which we'll cover next week. I'll post the verses. But these verses, I think, are some of the, if you focus on these verses, study these verses, you'll get a lot of insight into Atma Tattva. You know, it's a very basic thing, but just these topics that we've discussed today, it's very meaningful for a yoga practitioner because it's the start. It's kind of like if I want to, I'm going to say that yoga is about connecting, right? It's about connecting with the divine. But connecting what? Connecting who? Oh, it's connecting me. Well, what is me? What am I? And that's the question that we're answering here. That's the first question that we really want to answer. It comes across very intuitively, you know, because we're all embodied, right? It's natural to identify with our outer shell. Just like if you're driving your car and somebody rear-ends you, what are you going to jump out of the car and say at the person, hey, why did you hit me? Well, okay, I know you didn't hit me, you hit my car, but it's a natural thing. I'm driving the car. I think of the car as an extension of myself, right? If you're teaching someone to drive, that's one of the first things that you want to teach them. Okay, you're getting in the car, and when you're driving the car, you have to be in control of the car. Think of the car as an extension of your body. You know, and you need to be aware. You now have your senses are extended through the speedometer and through the rear view mirror and the windshield. You need to be aware of that and be aware of your body space in your car body. It's just like that with the physical body, except that we're more embedded. It's more natural to think of the body as the self. So anyway, we've gone through these verses and we've talked about Atma Tattva, and hopefully there's some, you know, food for thought here, some food for further study. I know it seems like a very basic start, but hopefully that has given you some things to think about and consider as you go through the Gita. Any questions that any of you have before we close here? I have not seen any questions so far, so I'm going to assume that that all made sense. Yes, I am also imagining that. Monica is also a little afraid of that, and we're now counting down. We've got about 6.5 years to go there. All right. Well, thank you very much. I am going to stop sharing and stop recording.